A werewolf shifter romance written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue. In a sacred cavern, where moonlight dared not tread and shadows danced to the rhythm of dripping water, an old seer, blind to the world but not to the twisting threads of fate, hunched over a glowing rune. Her breath, a fragile whisper, stirred the incense-laden air. Then, her voice, like stones grinding in a forgotten riverbed, rasped forth, heavy with an ancient sorrow. "Two souls, I see them, a brilliant, single light," she intoned, her milky eyes fixed on a vision only she could perceive. "But a trusted hand, cloaked in wisdom, shall offer poison as cure, and a devastating betrayal will carve a scar deep into the pack's heart." Her gnarled fingers tightened on the rune, its light flaring. "Shadows will reign, and love's path will be lost to vengeance. Yet, only when that scar is owned, its pain reforged into unyielding strength, can those twin flames reunite, burning brighter against the darkness. So it is foreseen. So it shall be." A final, sharp flare from the rune, then silence, save for a lone, mournful wolf howl echoing from the distant, unknowing forest.
The scent of winter wolfsbane, sharp and deceptively sweet, clung to the air in my chambers, a perfume she'd never worn, yet it choked me with a premonition so visceral, so cold. It felt as if the moon goddess herself had whispered a death sentence against my soul. This morning, the world was supposed to sing of Elara, of us. Instead, an unseen frost was already creeping into the edges of our forever, and I, Kael, Alpha of Silverwood, was about to become the butcher of my own heart. How could I have known that the greatest act of love I would ever commit would be disguised as the most unforgivable betrayal? The sun, a benevolent eye in the endless blue, had been dappling the forest floor just hours before, painting shifting mosaics of light and shadow across Elara's laughter. Her joy was a melody that resonated deep within my chest, a counterpoint to the steady, powerful thrum of my own wolf's contentment. We were in our sanctuary, a secluded clearing ringed by ancient oaks, their leaves whispering secrets only lovers and the wind could comprehend. "You're cheating, Kael," she'd accused, her breath coming in playful gasps as she dodged my mock lunge. Her eyes, the color of warm honey, sparkled with mischief and an affection so pure it made my heart ache with the sheer force of it. I'd feigned injury, stumbling back with a groan. "Cheating? My formidable Luna-to-be, your grace alone is enough to unbalance any alpha. I merely try to keep pace." Elara had laughed again, the sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. She closed the distance between us, her smaller hand fitting so perfectly into mine, a familiar comfort that always felt like coming home. "Flatterer, perhaps I should let you win more often then. Keep that alpha ego of yours appropriately inflated." "Oh, it needs no help in that department when you are near," I'd murmured, pulling her closer, inhaling the unique scent of her, pine needles, wild berries, and that indefinable essence that was purely Elara, purely mine. "Soon, my love, the whole pack, the whole world, will see what I already know. You, standing beside me, not just as my mate, but as their queen." Her smile had softened then, a touch of awe gracing her features. Our bonding ceremony. I find myself counting the moments, Kael. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that the goddess chose so kindly for us. I'd brushed a stray auburn curl from her temple, my touch lingering. She chose perfectly, Elara, as she always does when it comes to matters of the heart, of the true bond. We walked hand in hand, the silence between us filled with the easy rhythm of two souls perfectly attuned. My wolf purred, a deep rumble of satisfaction. This was right. This was destiny. The vibrant green of the new leaves, the rich, loamy scent of the earth, the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Everything felt sharper, more alive, a world painted in brighter colors simply because she was in it. We passed a young couple from the pack, their own recent bonding still fresh in their shy smiles. They bowed their heads respectfully. "Alpha Kael, soon to be Luna, Elara," the young male greeted, his voice full of warmth. "May your happiness continue to bless Silverwood." "Thank you, Finn," I replied, my arm instinctively going around Elara's waist. "Your own joy is a blessing to us all." Elara's answering smile to them was radiant. "May the moon goddess always light your path together," she said, her voice carrying a gentle sincerity that already marked her as a true Luna in the hearts of many. Looking back, that simple, sunlit walk, those innocent well-wishes, they were the last pure notes of a song whose final verse would be a lament. How could I have known that the air itself was already thick with impending doom, that the path ahead, which looked so bright, was about to plunge into an abyss of unimaginable darkness? If only I'd seen the subtle shift in the wind, the first almost imperceptible shadow falling across our perfect day. The warmth of that forest clearing, however, felt a lifetime away by the time I found myself in my private study later that evening. The familiar scent of old parchment, polished wood, and drying herbs usually brought me a sense of calm, of order. But that night, it felt like a tomb. Elder Maeve sat opposite me, her face a mask of solemn wisdom, yet her eyes, usually so kind, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite name, something that coiled like a serpent in the pit of my stomach. "Alpha Kael," she began, her voice a low, sorrowful thrum. "There are matters of grave importance we must discuss. Matters that touch upon the very heart of Silverwood, and upon Elara." A cold tendril of unease wrapped around my heart. "Elara? Is she unwell? What is it, Maeve?" Maeve sighed, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. She pushed a collection of brittle scrolls across the heavy oak desk towards me. "These are ancient texts, Kael, prophecies spoken by the first Lunas. They speak of a shadow, a blood curse tied to the Luna of the Silverwood Alpha if the lines of power converge under certain omens." Her gaze was intent, heavy. "Omens that have begun to manifest." I unrolled one of the scrolls. The script was archaic, the symbols faded, but the imagery depicted was disturbing: a wolf howling under a fractured moon, a crimson stain spreading across a snow-covered landscape. "Maeve, these are old tales, superstitions." My voice trailed off, lacking conviction even to my own ears. "Are they, Kael?" She produced a small, intricately carved wooden bird, its wings broken. "This was found this morning, placed upon the threshold of Elara's private garden. It is a known sigil of Alpha Forlag." Forlag. The name alone was a venomous whisper. An alpha from the desolate northern wastes, known for his brutality, his penchant for psychological warfare, his particular delight in breaking his enemies through their mates. My wolf snarled within me, a protective fury rising instantly. "Forlag dares to threaten what is mine." I growled, the sound deeper than I intended. "He does more than threaten, Alpha." Maeve pressed, her voice dropping further, becoming more confiding, more urgent. She then laid out a missive, supposedly intercepted from one of Forlag's spies, its script crude, its message chillingly direct. It spoke of Forlag's intent, his vow to claim the spirit of Silverwood's new Luna, to make her suffering a monument to Kael's weakness. The details were sickening, specific, designed to exploit an alpha's deepest fears for his mate. My hands clenched into fists on the desktop, the parchment crinkling under the pressure. The air in the room grew thick, the scent of old herbs now cloying, suffocating. I could almost taste the metallic tang of fear on my tongue. This cannot be true." I managed, my voice hoarse, a raw sound in the oppressive silence. My mind reeled, a vortex of disbelief and horror. Elara, my vibrant, loving Elara, subjected to such horrors? It was utterly unthinkable. Maeve's expression was one of profound sympathy, yet her eyes held that unwavering, unreadable intensity that so unsettled me. The confluence of the omens, Kael, the sigil, this message. I have consulted the bone readers, the wind talkers. They all confirm it. Forlag has fixated on Elara. He sees her as your vulnerability. Upon your formal bonding, when her Luna power fully awakens and settles, he believes she will be at her most receptive to his darkness. He intends to strike then, to not just kill her, but to shatter her spirit, to use her pain to break you and Silverwood. Every word was a hammer blow against the shield of my disbelief. My wolf raged, a storm of protectiveness and fury. But beneath it, a colder, more insidious emotion was taking root: fear. A fear so profound, so elemental, it threatened to paralyze me. The scent of winter wolfsbane seemed to seep from the very walls, a phantom perfume of impending doom. What can be done? I finally choked out, the question a raw wound. How do I protect her, Maeve? Tell me. Maeve's gaze met mine, steady and filled with a terrible, feigned sorrow that I, in my desperation, mistook for genuine empathy. There is only one way, Kael, she said, her voice soft, yet carrying the weight of a death sentence. A path of unthinkable sacrifice for you. But it is the only path that ensures her life and her sanity. Unthinkable. The word echoed in the hollow chambers of my mind as I paced my private quarters later that night, the moon a cold, distant witness to my torment. Maeve's words, her solution, were a poison that had seeped into my very marrow, corrupting every loving instinct I possessed. You must make him believe she is worthless to you, Kael. Utterly undesirable. An outcast. Forelag targets strength, symbols of power. If Elara is seen as nothing, a rejected mate, her Luna potential nullified before it can even truly awaken, he will lose interest. He seeks a grand prize, not discarded scraps. Her logic, presented with such sorrowful conviction, had been a silken snare, tightening with every beat of my terrified heart. She'd outlined it with chilling precision, a private rejection, swift, brutal, and absolute. No public spectacle. That would be too obvious, Maeve had warned, too easily seen as a ploy by Forlag's spies, who were surely already watching, their shadowy tendrils reaching into our very lives. No, this had to feel real, final, a genuine severing of the deepest bond a werewolf could know. She must never know the true reason, Kael. If she suspects you act out of love, out of a desire to protect her, Forlag will see through it. Her pain must be genuine for him to believe it. Her heartbreak will be her shield. It is a terrible burden for you to bear, Alpha, but it is the only way to save her life. My wolf howled within me, a raw, visceral protest against the very idea. To wound Elara, to deliberately inflict such agony upon the woman who was the very air I breathed, the light in my existence? It was a sacrilege, a blasphemy against the moon goddess herself. I smashed a fist against the stone wall, the sharp pain a welcome, albeit fleeting, distraction from the churning chaos in my soul. Flashbacks assaulted me, unbidden and cruel. Elara's laughter in the sun-dappled clearing, the soft touch of her hand in mine, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of our future, of our pups. Pups we would now never have. Each memory was a fresh stab of a poisoned dagger, twisted by Maeve's horrifying words. I picked up a small, smooth river stone she'd given me, a silly token from a day we'd spent by the laughing brook, its surface worn smooth by her touch. It felt warm in my palm, a stark contrast to the ice encasing my heart. How can I do this to you, my love? I whispered to the unhearing stone, my voice cracking, breaking. How can I become the monster in your story, the architect of your deepest pain? The alternative, Maeve had painted with horrifying clarity, was Elara in Forlag's clutches. The images conjured by the intercepted missive, by Maeve's grave interpretations of the omens, they were a living nightmare I couldn't bear to even fully imagine. My Elara, vibrant and full of light, subjected to unspeakable horrors that would shatter her very essence. No, I couldn't allow it. My duty as Alpha, my deepest vow as her mate, was to protect her, no matter the cost to myself. And the cost, I knew with chilling certainty, would be my soul. My wolf and I were one in our agony, our shared torment a silent scream in the confines of my mind. This is wrong, Kael, he snarled, his pain a mirror of my own. She is ours to protect, not to destroy from within. And how else do we protect her, Brother Wolf? I countered, my own thoughts a ragged defense against his righteous fury. Stand by and watch Forlag take her. Watch Maeve's prophecies come true before our very eyes. This path, it is a living death for me, for us, but she will live. She will be safe, even if she hates me for it, even if I hate myself for eternity. The hours bled away, each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall a nail in the coffin of my happiness, of our shared future. By the time the first, pale fingers of dawn touched the sky, painting the world in hues of gray and despair, my decision was made. A cold, hard knot of resolve settled in my gut, a chilling imitation of strength. I would become the villain. I would shatter her heart to save her life. I would bear her hatred, her pack's scorn, the unending winter in my own soul, if it meant Elara walked free, untouched by Forlag's shadow. The scent of wolfsbane, once a mere premonition, now felt like the only air I could breathe, the perfume of my sacrifice. Looking back, how could I have been so utterly blind? I should have questioned Maeve more, fought harder for another way, sought any alternative. But in that moment, trapped in a sophisticated web of fear and insidious manipulation, her cruel logic seemed the only desperate lifeline, the only way out of an impossible choice. The air in our chambers, when I finally forced myself to enter, hummed with a soft, hopeful anticipation. Elara had lit candles, their flickering glow casting warm shadows on the familiar tapestries, the scent of lavender and rose. Her scent, the scent of our love. A bomb I knew I was about to desecrate beyond repair. She turned as I entered, her face alight with that radiant smile that always made my world tilt on its axis, a smile that was about to die. She was dressed in a simple, flowing gown of moonlight silver, ready for the intimate pre-bonding ritual we had planned, a quiet affirmation of our love before the pact ceremony that was now a phantom, a ghost of what should have been. "Kael," she breathed, her voice soft with love, a melody I would never hear directed at me in the same way again. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost." She moved towards me, her arms outstretched, her honey-colored eyes shining with an innocent expectation that was like a physical blow. Each step she took towards me a step towards her own devastation. This was it, the moment of severance, the point of no return. I forced my features into a mask of cold indifference, a chilling parody of the alpha she knew, the mate she loved. My wolf clawed at the inside of my chest, a frantic, desperate prisoner begging me to stop, to hold her, to scream the truth. I silenced him with a will of iron, forged in the fires of my agonizing choice. "Elara," I began, my voice a stranger's, devoid of all warmth, each word a carefully chosen shard of ice designed to pierce her loving heart. Her smile faltered, a flicker of confusion clouding her beautiful eyes. "Kael, what is it? Are you unwell?" Her brow furrowed with concern, that gentle, caring nature of hers twisting the knife in my own gut. "I am perfectly well," I stated, deliberately stepping back as she reached for me. The small movement a calculated cruelty, a clear rejection of her touch. I saw the hurt flash in her eyes, quickly followed by a deeper, more profound unease that made my stomach churn. "But things have changed." "Changed?" she whispered, her hand falling to her side, the light in her eyes beginning to dim. "What do you mean, changed?" "The ceremony is tomorrow, Kael." "There will be no ceremony, Elara," I said, the words tasting like ash and bile in my mouth. I watched, helpless, as her radiant joy crumbled, her vibrant light extinguishing before my very eyes. "I cannot bond with you." "Cannot bond." Disbelief warred with dawning horror on her beautiful face, her lips trembling. "But we are fated, Kael. The moon goddess. She brought us together." "Fate can be mistaken, Elara." I cut in, my tone deliberately harsh, each word a carefully rehearsed echo of Maeve's poisonous counsel. Or perhaps I was mistaken in what I thought I wanted, what I needed. I let my gaze drift over her, coolly, appraisingly, as if she were a stranger, a candidate found wanting, not the very center of my universe. The act tore strips from my soul, leaving it raw and bleeding. "You are not what I need in a Luna. Not what this pack requires to be strong." Her breath hitched, a small, wounded sound that echoed the breaking of my own heart. "Not what you need," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper, fragile as spun glass. Tears welled, shimmering like fallen stars in her honey-gold eyes, each one a condemnation of my actions. "Kael, please. What are you saying? This is some cruel jest, it has to be." "It is no jest," I said, my heart fracturing into a million pieces with every false, brutal word I uttered. "I have made my decision. You will never be my Luna, Elara." I forced myself to turn away from her then, unable to bear the sight of her utter devastation, the silent scream in her eyes that I knew would haunt my nightmares for the rest of my miserable existence. The sweet, familiar scent of lavender and roses was now a torment, a reminder of the paradise I was single-handedly, deliberately, destroying. But why? The word was a broken sob, filled with an agony that was a perfect, horrifying mirror of my own hidden torment. Yesterday, you loved me. We were everything to each other. What changed, Kael? What did I do wrong? You did nothing, my love, my life. I wanted to scream, to fall at her feet and beg her forgiveness for a sin she couldn't comprehend. I am doing this to save you. Can't you see? But the words remained locked behind the impenetrable dam of my terrible vow, a prisoner of my own making. I had to be cruel. I had to be absolute. For her sake. For her life. My feelings have changed, I said, the lie of venomous serpent coiling in my throat, choking me with its vileness. It is as simple and as final as that. I forced myself to walk towards the door, each step an eternity, each footfall heavy as lead. I could feel her gaze burning into my back, could hear the soft, desperate sounds of her world collapsing into ruin around her. Just before I reached the threshold, I paused, my back still to her. This was the final nail, the one Maeve had insisted upon, the blow designed to ensure Elara fled, to ensure Forlag would see her as utterly abandoned. You should find your happiness elsewhere, Elara. I managed, my voice a rasp. Far from Silverwood. Then, I walked out, leaving her alone in the once warm, now chillingly silent candlelit room, surrounded by the symbols of a love I had just brutally, irrevocably murdered. The sound of her first truly shattered sob followed me down the corridor, a ghostly hand clutching at my already dead heart. The scent of winter wolfsbane was overpowering now, the only perfume left in my desolate, self-made hell. It was done. My Elara was safe. And I, Kael, Alpha of Silverwood, was damned for all time.
The echo of the closing door was a physical blow, a final, brutal punctuation mark on a sentence I couldn't comprehend. Kael was gone. The words he'd spoken, "You will never be my Luna, Elara. My feelings have changed. Find your happiness elsewhere, far from Silverwood," swirled in the candlelit room like shards of ice, each one embedding itself deeper into the gaping wound where my heart had been just moments before. Was this a nightmare? A cruel, twisted illusion conjured by some malevolent spirit? I pressed my trembling hands to my mouth, a sob tearing through me, raw and ragged. The scent of lavender and rose, our scent, choked me, a fragrant poison. How could the love that had been my sun, my moon, my very stars, simply extinguish? The hours that followed bled into a blur of unreality. I don't know how long I lay there on the cold floor, the silver gown Kael had loved now feeling like a shroud. Each beat of my heart was a fresh wave of agony, his final words a relentless torment. Not what I need. My feelings have changed, it made no sense. Yesterday, his eyes had held only adoration. Yesterday, his touch had promised forever. What darkness had seized him? What had I done, or not done, to warrant such utter, soul-crushing devastation? My wolf whimpered within me, a wounded creature, mirroring the desolation that consumed my human half. She, too, could not understand how her other half, her Kael, could inflict such a mortal wound. It was Elder Maeve who found me, or perhaps, who came for me when the dawn painted bruised colors across the sky. Her face, when she entered my chambers, was a study in carefully crafted sorrow. The sight of her, usually a comfort, now sent a strange chill through me. "My poor child," she murmured, her voice like the rustle of autumn leaves, soft and dry. She knelt beside me, her hand cool on my fevered brow. "What has happened here, Elara?" Her question felt like a mockery. What had happened? The sky had fallen. The world had ended. Kael. I choked out, the name itself a fresh agony. He said. But the words wouldn't come. How could I voice such an obscenity? Maeve's eyes, those deep pools of supposed wisdom, held a flicker I couldn't decipher. The Alpha is burdened, Elara. Greatly burdened. Sometimes, the weight of leadership forces choices that seem cruel to gentler hearts. Gentler hearts? I whispered, confusion warring with the pain. He said I was not what he needed. That his feelings had changed. I looked at her, desperate for an explanation, for a denial, for anything but the terrible truth Kael had delivered. Why, Maeve? Why would he do this? She sighed, a heavy, theatrical sound. My dear, Kael has always been a complex soul, his duties immense. Perhaps he feared the bond would weaken him, or that you, in your tenderness, were not prepared for the harsh realities of being an alpha's Luna in these uncertain times. Her words were like silken threads, wrapping around my confusion, subtly shaping it. He suffers, too, child. Believe that. This was not easy for him. I wanted to scream. Suffer? His suffering couldn't compare to this abyss he'd thrown me into. But Maeve's calm demeanor, her gentle reassurances that Kael acted out of some twisted, incomprehensible alpha duty, began to seep into my shattered consciousness. It didn't lessen the pain, but it added a layer of bewildering, helpless despair. If he did this for the pack, for some reason I couldn't grasp, then what hope was there? Over the next few days, Maeve was a constant, quiet presence. She spoke of Kael's deep regret, his solitude, painting him as a tragic figure. All the while, the pack itself grew distant. Glances that were once warm now held pity, or worse, a cool appraisal. Whispers followed me like shadows, Elara, so fragile. Or the Alpha knew best. I felt myself becoming a ghost in my own home. Kael remained unseen, a true phantom, his absence a constant, throbbing ache. The encouragement to leave Silverwood came cloaked in false concern, delivered by two of Maeve's closest confidants among the Elder Council. They found me by the river, the place Kael and I had shared so many dreams. Their voices were kind, their eyes anything but. Elara, dear, one began, her tone syrupy, we've all been so worried about you. This unfortunate situation with Alpha Kael, it must be terribly painful to remain here, surrounded by memories. The other chimed in, Elder Maeve feels, and we agree, that perhaps a change of scenery, some time away to heal, would be best for you. For your own peace of mind, child. Their words, though gentle, felt like an edict. I was being erased. You mean, you want me to leave? I asked, my voice hollow even to my own ears. Not want, dear, the first corrected smoothly. We simply feel it would be for your ultimate well-being. Silverwood holds too much pain for you now. There are other places, other packs, where a she-wolf of your qualities might find a new beginning. A new beginning. When the only beginning I had ever wanted had been torn from me. There was no fight left in me then, only a bone-deep weariness, a crushing sense of worthlessness. If Kael didn't want me, if the pack saw me as a liability, what was there to stay for? Maeve arranged it all with quiet efficiency. A small satchel of supplies, a cloak that felt too thin against the sudden chill in the air, and a path leading away from everything I had ever known or loved. As I stood at the edge of the Silverwood territory, the familiar scent of pine and damp earth a fresh torment, Kael's final words echoed in my mind, find your happiness elsewhere, Elara. Far from Silverwood. It was a command, a banishment. And I, broken and lost, obeyed. The journey into the wilderness was a descent into a personal hell. Each step took me further from Kael, further from the life I had cherished. The wind whispered his name, the rustling leaves mocked me with memories of his laughter. Some nights, I collapsed by the roots of ancient trees, the cold seeping into my bones, and wept until no more tears would come, my wolf a silent, shivering companion in my misery. I hunted poorly, my focus shattered, my will to live a flickering ember. Days bled into weeks. There were times, huddled against a storm, hunger gnawing at my belly and despair a heavy shroud, that I almost welcomed the end. What was there to live for when my fated mate, my very soul, had deemed me unworthy? Not what I need. The words were a brand on my heart. One particularly brutal night, with a freezing rain lashing down and my strength utterly gone, I stumbled and fell into a shallow ravine, the last of my consciousness surrendering to the icy blackness. Kael. His name was a final, broken whisper on my lips. I awoke to the smell of wood smoke and unfamiliar herbs, a rough blanket scratching against my skin. My head throbbed, my body ached, but I was alive. An old she-wolf, her face a road map of wrinkles and her eyes as sharp and knowing as a hawk's, was tending a small fire. Her dwelling was a crude lean-to, nestled deep within the harshest part of the wildlands, a place where pack wolves rarely ventured. So, the little lost bird decided to wake up, she rasped, her voice like stones grinding together. She offered me a wooden bowl of warm, bitter broth. Drink. Unless you plan on finishing the job that fool Alpha started. Her name was Elara, and she was a rogue, an outcast by choice. She asked no questions about my past, but her knowing gaze saw more than I wished. She was a harsh healer, offering no soft comforts, only the brutal necessities of survival. Pain is a teacher, girl, she'd grunt, forcing me to train even when my muscles screamed and my spirit quailed. Grief is a fire. Let it burn away the weakness, or let it consume you. Your choice. Months passed under Lyra's abrasive tutelage. I learned to track silent as a shadow, to fight with a desperation I hadn't known I possessed, to endure hardships that would have broken the Elara of old. The raw agony of Kael's rejection didn't disappear, but it began to change, to transmute. The endless, aching question of why, slowly began to be overshadowed by a different, colder query: how? How could he have done it? How could Maeve have been so complicit in her gentle cruelty? The image of Kael's cold, indifferent face, the memory of Maeve's silken, manipulative words, these became the fuel for a new, burgeoning fire within me. It wasn't the warmth of love, but the icy burn of resentment, then anger, then a focused, chilling rage. Lyra saw the shift. The bird learns to fly with broken wings, she said one evening, watching me practice with a staff she carved. Or perhaps, it learns to become a hawk. One crisp morning, years after I'd stumbled away from Silverwood, I stood on a high, windswept precipice. The Elara who had wept for Kael was a distant memory, a ghost. In her place was someone leaner, harder, her eyes no longer soft with love but sharp with a dangerous clarity. My hair, once lovingly braided by Kael, now hung wild and free, or was sometimes bound back with grim efficiency. Scars, both visible and hidden, mapped my journey. I looked towards the distant, hazy outline of the Silverwood Mountains. The pain was still there, a deep, indelible ache, but it was now intertwined with an iron resolve. He took everything from me, I said aloud, my voice steady, devoid of the tremor it once held. My love, my life, my pack. He, and Maeve with her honeyed lies, made me nothing in their eyes. I remembered her gentle urgings, her feigned sympathy. Looking back, how could I have been so blind to her deceit, to the web she spun around Kael, around me? I clenched my fists. They will pay. Kael will know the desolation he gifted me. He will understand what it means to have his world shattered by the one he should have trusted above all. I pulled the hood of a dark, worn cloak over my head, the shadows a welcome embrace. I am no longer his Elara, the gentle bloom he crushed underfoot. I am the veiled hand. I am the thorn that has grown from that broken stem. And it is time Silverwood remembered the storm that follows a great injustice. My wolf, no longer a whimpering pup but a lean, formidable predator, rose within me, her silent agreement a cold fire in my veins. My path was clear. Vengeance was not just a desire, it was a destiny I would forge with my own hands.
Years. How many had it been since Elara's scent last graced these halls, since her laughter had echoed off these stone walls? Too many. Each turning of the season was a fresh layer of dust on a memory I tried, and failed to bury. Maeve assured me Elara was safe, thriving even, in some distant, sunnier land. Her heart healed, her life renewed. A small, selfish part of me prayed it was true. A larger, tormented part knew the lie of it. How could a heart heal from a wound deliberately inflicted by its other half? Mine certainly hadn't. It beat, yes, a hollow, dutiful rhythm, but the joy, the light. Elara had taken all of that with her, leaving behind this gilded cage of an alpha's life. And then, just when the monotony of my guilt had settled into a dull, predictable ache, a discordant note sounded in the quiet symphony of Silverwood's supposed peace. A whisper so faint I almost dismissed it as the wind sighing through the ancient pines. If only I had understood then that it wasn't the wind, but the first breath of a storm I myself had sown. The initial signs were subtle, easily dismissed by a mind eager for tranquility. A patrol reporting an unusual stillness in the western woods. The game seemingly vanished overnight, leaving an eerie silence where there should have been the rustle of life. My beta, Rorik, a steadfast wolf whose senses were nearly as keen as my own, had frowned. "It's nothing I can pinpoint," Alpha, Rorik had admitted, his brow furrowed in thought as we stood overlooking the training grounds. No scent of intruders, no tracks, just a feeling, like the forest is holding its breath, waiting. Waiting for what, Rorik? I'd asked, a strange prickle dancing along my own spine. My wolf, usually a calm, steady presence since Elara, stirred restlessly within me, a low growl vibrating deep in my chest for no discernible reason. "That's just it, Kael," he'd said, using my name in the more relaxed manner of our long friendship. "I don't know. Probably just the change in weather unsettling the herds." I nodded, forcing a reassurance I didn't feel. Likely. Keep the patrols vigilant, nonetheless. But the unease lingered, a phantom touch on the edge of my awareness. There were nights I'd wake, thinking I'd heard her laugh, a ghost of a sound, only to find my chambers empty, save for the oppressive weight of my memories. The small, smooth river stone she'd given me, hidden away in the depths of my desk drawer, sometimes felt like it pulsed with a faint, sorrowful energy. Or perhaps that was just my own fractured mind playing tricks. Looking back, how could I have been so slow to recognize the signs? The forest wasn't holding its breath for a change in weather. It was bracing for the return of a spirit it had never truly forgotten. The true disruption, the one that sent the first real tremor through the pack, was the sabotage of the Great Autumn Hunt. It was more than just a tradition. It was crucial for our winter stores, a display of the pack's strength and unity, and a chance for me, as Alpha, to connect with my wolves on a primal level. I'd planned it meticulously, every detail overseen. The herds were plentiful, the weather crisp and clear. It should have been perfect. The scent trails are scattered, Alpha, young Lyle, one of our keenest trackers, reported back, his face pale with confusion and exertion. It's like something deliberately drove the elk in a dozen different directions. And the northern pass, a fresh rock slide, too precise to be natural, blocks it completely. Impossible. I'd snapped, my temper flaring hotter than it should have. My wolf paced within me, agitated. We scouted that pass yesterday. It was clear. The hunt devolved into a frustrating, fruitless endeavor. We returned with barely enough to feed the elders and pups for a week, let alone stock the winter larders. The grumbling among the pack was audible, their disappointment a palpable weight. Some looked to me with questioning eyes, the unspoken doubt in their gazes a fresh sting to my already burdened conscience. "Bad omens, Alpha," grumbled old Torvin, a respected elder, though one I'd always found a bit too fond of doomsaying. "The forest spirits are displeased." It was sabotage, Torvin, not spirits, I'd retorted, more sharply than intended. But by whom? And why? The only answer was an unsettling silence. That night, in the privacy of my study, I found it, a single, wilting nightshade, Elara's once favorite bloom, laid carefully on my maps of the hunting grounds. Its dark petals seemed to mock me, its presence a chillingly personal, yet utterly anonymous, accusation. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be. She was gone, Maeve had assured me, thriving elsewhere. This had to be a cruel coincidence, a trick of some unknown enemy, using symbols they couldn't possibly understand the significance of. My wolf, however, let out a low, mournful howl in the depths of my mind, a sound of dawning, terrible recognition. The nightshade was only the beginning. A subtle, insidious campaign of psychological warfare began to unfold, targeting not just me, but my inner circle, and, strangely enough, Elder Maeve. Important documents in my study would be slightly out of place, as if read by unseen eyes. Maeve's meticulously ordered herb garden was disturbed one morning, rare healing plants uprooted and laid in a wilting circle, a pattern that held no known ritualistic meaning but radiated a quiet malice. Alpha, this is beyond mere mischief, Maeve said, her voice trembling with a very convincing display of fear as she showed me the damage. I feel a dark presence in Silverwood, a watching, waiting entity. These are not the acts of common rogues. This feels like a spirit's vengeance. I tried to dismiss her fears, but her words echoed my own growing dread. Whispers seemed to follow me, too faint to truly hear, yet carrying inflections that were achingly familiar. Sometimes, on the wind, I'd catch a phrase, a snatch of a lullaby Elara used to hum, or, more chillingly, a twisted echo of the very words I'd used to reject her. Not what I need. My sleep became a battleground of fragmented memories and suffocating guilt. Elara's face, as it had been in those last moments, shattered, betrayed, haunted me. One morning, a small, intricately carved wolf, identical to one I'd made for her in the first blush of our love, a symbol of our fated bond, was found on my pillow, its wooden heart split neatly in two. This is a curse, Kael, Maeve insisted, her eyes wide with alarm when I showed it to her. Aimed at you, at the heart of your alpha line. We must perform a cleansing ritual, consult the spirits. Her panic only fueled my own growing paranoia. What if she was right? What if some enemy had learned of Elara, of my secret, terrible act, and was now using her memory, her symbols, to torment me, to break me? The alternative, that Elara herself could be capable of such cold, calculated cruelty, was a thought I couldn't yet allow myself to fully entertain. The Elara I remembered, the Elara I had loved with every fiber of my being, would never, could never. The mounting pressure, the sleepless nights, the constant, gnawing unease, it all began to fray the edges of my control. Tensions within the pack were simmering, the failed hunt and the strange occurrences creating an undercurrent of fear and distrust. During a particularly strained council meeting, where I was trying to address the pack's concerns about our dwindling winter stores, my beta Rorik presented a sensible, if unpopular, plan for rationing. But old Torvin, ever the voice of dissent, argued vehemently against it, his words bordering on insubordination. Your plan is sound, Rorik, I said, my voice tight. But perhaps Torvin has an alternative that doesn't involve our pups going hungry? Torvin puffed himself up. The spirits must be appeased, Alpha, not ignored with practicalities. Perhaps if our leadership was stronger, more attuned to the will of the moon goddess. Something in me snapped. The veiled accusation, the constant second-guessing, the weight of my own hidden failures, it was too much. Stronger, Torvin. I roared, rising to my feet, my alpha power surging, silencing the room. You dare question my attunement? Perhaps the spirit causing our woes is a traitor within our own ranks, someone deliberately sowing discord. My furious gaze landed on Lyle, the young tracker who had first reported the scattered elk trails. He was a good lad, loyal, but in my paranoia, his earlier confusion now seemed like guilt. Lyle, you were first at the northern pass. What did you really see before that rock slide? The young wolf went pale, stammering his innocence. And nothing, Alpha. I swear. Just as I reported. Liar, I accused, taking a menacing step towards him, my wolf a hair's breadth from an uncontrolled display. Someone is feeding information to our enemies. Someone is undermining this pack from within, and I will root them out. Rorik quickly stepped between us. Kael, enough. Lyle is loyal. You know this. This isn't like you. His words, the shocked and fearful faces of my counsel, even Maeve's carefully neutral, yet somehow satisfied expression, brought me crashing back to my senses. Shame washed over me, cold and bitter. I had let my fear, my guilt, make me a tyrant. The meeting ended in disarray, the cracks in my leadership now gaping wounds for all to see. Later that night, alone in my study, the silence pressing in, I found it. A single, auburn curl, the exact shade of Elara's hair, resting on my alpha's ceremonial cloak, the one I should have worn at our bonding. It lay there like a condemnation, a whisper of a ghost. I picked it up, my hand trembling. The scent that clung to it was faint, almost undetectable, but my wolf knew it. Pine needles. Wild berries. Elara. No, I whispered, the denial a hollow sound in the vast emptiness of the room. It cannot be. But a terrifying, undeniable certainty began to take root in the desolate landscape of my heart. She was back, or her spirit was, and she was here for a reckoning.
From my shadowed vantage point high in the ancient oak overlooking Kael's private terrace, a grim satisfaction had settled deep in my bones. The single auburn curl, a relic of the Elara he had destroyed, had clearly found its mark. I'd watched him discover it, seen the tremor in his hand, the way his broad shoulders, once a symbol of such unwavering strength, had sagged with a sudden, visible burden. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the ghostly torment that had been my constant companion for years. Let him wonder. Let him fear. But as I saw him clutch the lock of hair, his face contorted not just with shock, but with a profound, almost unbearable agony, a different, unwelcome sensation pricked at the edges of my resolve, a faint, treacherous echo from the dormant bond we shared. My wolf, so long a creature of cold fury, stirred with a disquieting whimper. Annoying. This quest for vengeance was meant to be clean, surgical. Complications like feeling something for the architect of my ruin were not part of the plan. Still, his visible distress was a sign. The psychological wounds were deepening. It was time to seek more than just his torment. It was time to unearth the roots of this betrayal, to understand the full extent of the rot within Silverwood. And Maeve, the ever-present, softly spoken elder with eyes that missed nothing, was a shadow that had loomed too long in the periphery of my pain. Kael's blind trust in her, her subtle influence over him, it reeked of manipulation. Looking back, how could I not have questioned her gentle concern for me all those years ago? I muttered to the silent trees. Her chambers, or the pack archives she so diligently curated, surely held secrets. Under the cloak of a new moon, when the pack slept soundly and only the sentries patrolled the outer perimeter, I moved. The skills Lyra had drilled into me, honed by years of solitary survival, made me a whisper in the darkness. The lock on Maeve's private study, intricate as it was, yielded to my practiced touch. The air inside was thick with the cloying scent of dried herbs I didn't recognize, and something else, something metallic and unsettling that prickled my senses. By the faint moonlight filtering through the narrow window, I searched. Scrolls, ledgers, personal journals, Maeve was meticulous, if nothing else. My fingers brushed against a false bottom in an old cedar chest. Inside, nestled amongst bundles of faded parchments, was a small, leather-bound book. Its pages were filled with Maeve's spidery script, detailing not just pack lineages and healing remedies, but observations, manipulations, plans. My breath caught. Here, she wrote of Kael's passionate but distressingly soft nature regarding me. She detailed her concerns that my gentle spirit would be a detriment to his alpha strength, a vulnerability enemies like Foreleg would exploit. Then, a passage that made my blood run to ice: the boy resists the necessary course. The evidence of Foreleg's direct threat must be enhanced. He will see reason. He will protect her, even if he must break her first. It is the only way to ensure Silverwood's future aligns with the true strength it requires. A cold fury, sharper and more focused than any I had felt before, pulsed through me. Kael, a pawn? Broken by her design? The thought was a bitter pill. My vengeance had been a laser focused on him, but the beam was now splitting, seeking a new, perhaps even primary, target. Just as I was about to delve deeper into another of her damning entries, a floorboard creaked in the corridor outside. My heart leaped. Swiftly, silently, I replaced the journal, secured the chest, and melted back into the deepest shadows of the room, every nerve ending alight. Heavy footsteps approached, paused outside Maeve's door, then moved on. A patrol, perhaps, or Maeve herself, restless in the night. I waited, my breathing shallow, until the silence returned, then slipped away, the journal's poisonous secrets clutched tight against my chest, my mind reeling. What would Kael do if he knew the depth of this manipulation? Or did he already suspect, and his torment was a charade? No, the anguish I'd seen in him, that had been real. The next few days, I laid low, studying Maeve's journal, the world shifting with each revelation. Kael, in the meantime, was clearly on edge, his patrols doubled, his temper short with his pack mates. I watched him from afar during one of his increasingly frequent, solitary patrols near the western woods, a place we had once. No. I wouldn't let those memories surface. He stopped abruptly, his head snapping up, his nostrils flaring. Even from my concealed position, I felt it, a sudden, sharp tug on the mate bond, an electric awareness that hummed in my very bones. My wolf, usually so disciplined now, whined softly, a confused, longing sound. Kael looked around wildly, his expression a mask of bewilderment and a strange, haunted hope. Elara? His voice was a hoarse whisper, carried on the wind, so full of raw pain it was like a physical blow. Are you here? I pressed myself further into the shadows, my own heart hammering against my ribs. How could this be? After all these years, after everything, that forsaken bond still pulsed with a life of its own, an unwanted bridge between two souls meant to be sundered. He eventually moved on, shaking his head as if to clear it, but the encounter left me deeply unsettled. This spectral connection, it complicated everything. It was a weakness I couldn't afford. Perhaps that unsettling resurgence of the bond, that flicker of unwanted empathy, was what drove me to escalate my plans against Kael. If I was to remain focused on my original purpose, I needed to see him break, to see him stripped of all his alpha pride, to make his pain an undeniable reality that would drown out these confusing echoes from our past. Maeve's journal had revealed her manipulations, yes, but Kael had still been the one to speak the words, to cast me out. He was not innocent. I decided on a message that would cut deeper than any sabotage, something that would speak directly to the heart of what he had destroyed. In the dead of night, I slipped into his private chambers. The scent of him was everywhere, wolf, pine, and that underlying musk of command that had once made me feel so safe, so cherished. Now it only fueled my resolve. On his heavy oak desk, where he spent so many hours governing the pack that had so easily discarded me, I left it, a single, perfect white rose, its stem pierced through with a sharp, obsidian thorn. Beside it, I laid the small, smooth river stone he had once given me, the one I had carried through all my years of exile, a constant reminder. But now, with a shard of rock, I had etched a crack across its surface. I didn't stay to see his reaction, but I could imagine it. The white rose, a symbol of the pure love he had professed, now defiled by a thorn, a symbol of my pain. The cracked stone, a representation of our broken bond. It was a cruel, intimate message, designed to shatter any remaining composure. But Kael, it seemed, was not so easily broken. Or perhaps he was simply more desperate than I had anticipated. The following evening, as I scouted the perimeter near his lodge, a disquieting feeling washed over me. The air was too still, the usual night sounds of the forest too muted. A trap. My senses screamed a warning just as concealed nets sprung from the forest floor. I dodged, years of Lyra's harsh training kicking in, my body moving with a predator's grace. "Show yourself!" Kael's roar ripped through the night, no longer the uncertain whisper I'd heard by the western woods, but the full-throated command of an enraged alpha. "Whoever you are, face me." Figures emerged from the trees, Kael, Rorik, and a handful of his best warriors, their expressions grim. A moonlit chase began. I knew these woods better than they did, every shadow, every hidden path. I led them a desperate dance, my heart pounding with adrenaline and a strange, exhilarating fear. He was relentless, his speed and power far greater than I remembered, or perhaps, than I had allowed myself to remember. His pursuit was not just that of an alpha hunting an intruder, it was something more personal, more agonizingly focused. "Elara! If that is you, by the goddess, stop this madness," he bellowed, his voice raw with a pain that, infuriatingly, echoed within my own chest. I risked a glance back. He was closer than I liked, his face a mask of fury, desperation, and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. The thought was a jolt, nearly causing me to stumble. I pushed harder, using every trick Lyra had taught me, and finally, with a burst of speed, vanished into a dense thicket where I knew they couldn't easily follow. I found a hidden alcove in the rocks, my breath sawing in my lungs, and watched them give up the chase. Rorik eventually led the frustrated warriors away, but Kael remained for a long moment, standing alone in the moon-drenched clearing. He threw his head back and let out a howl, not of triumph, not of anger, but of such profound, gut-wrenching anguish that it struck me to the core. Then, he sank to his knees, his broad shoulders shaking, and I heard him whisper my name to the uncaring trees, his voice cracking with a sorrow that mirrored the devastation he had inflicted upon me all those years ago. "Elara, is it truly you? What have I done?" A wave of dizziness washed over me. Seeing his pain so raw, so undeniably real, it wasn't the triumph I had envisioned. It was confusing. Complicated. The cold satisfaction of my revenge felt tainted, muddied by the resurgence of a bond one had tried so hard to kill, and by the horrifying, dawning thought, looking back at Maeve's journal, at his torment now, how could I not see that he might be as much a victim as I was?
Kael's howl, a raw symphony of anguish that had echoed through the moonlit clearing, had done more than just startle me. It had fractured something deep within the icy fortress I'd built around my heart. His pain, so stark, so undeniably real as he whispered my name to the uncaring trees, had been an unwelcome mirror to my own endless night of sorrow. For years, my vengeance had been a singular, guiding star, a cold, clear light in the darkness of my exile. But seeing him broken, not by my hand, but by the ghosts of what he had done, what we had lost, it muddied the waters of my resolve. The clean lines of retribution blurred, tainted by a confusing, treacherous empathy. I needed answers, not just the satisfaction of his ruin. I needed to see his eyes when he faced me, Elara, the woman he'd shattered, not some phantom of his guilt. And so I decided. It was time for the veiled hand to step fully into the light, at least for him. I chose our sanctuary, the sun-dappled clearing ringed by ancient oaks where our love had once bloomed so vibrantly. Now, years later, it felt different. Overgrown in places, the familiar paths obscured, much like the truth I sought. I waited, cloaked in shadow, my heart a wild drum against my ribs. When he finally arrived, drawn perhaps by an instinct I didn't fully understand or a message I'd subtly left, his scent reached me first. Pine, alpha musk, and an underlying note of weariness that hadn't been there all those years ago. He moved with the same powerful grace, but the confident set of his shoulders was gone, replaced by a heavy burden. He stopped in the center of the clearing, his gaze sweeping the familiar surroundings, a deep sigh escaping him. This was it. I stepped from the shadows. Looking for something, Kael? My voice, though I intended it to be cold and steady, held a slight tremor that infuriated me. He spun around, his body instantly tensing, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of the knife at his belt. And then he saw me, truly saw me. Not a fleeting shadow in the woods, not a ghostly scent on the wind, but Elara. His Elara, or what was left of her. His eyes, those amber depths I had once drowned in, widened in utter shock, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within them, disbelief, fear, a wild, impossible hope, and then, unmistakably, a profound, gut-wrenching guilt. Elara. He breathed my name like a prayer and a curse, his voice raw, incredulous. By the moon goddess, you're alive. He took a hesitant step towards me, then another, as if approaching a skittish, dangerous animal. Which, perhaps, I was. Did you hope I had simply withered away from grief, Kael? I countered, forcing the ice back into my tone, fortifying the walls around my heart. Your wish, it seems, was not granted. I allowed a small, bitter smile to touch my lips. Though not for lack of trying on your part. He flinched as if I'd struck him. No, Elara, I never wished you ill. His voice was thick with an emotion I couldn't, or wouldn't, decipher. What I did, I know it was monstrous. Unforgivable. Unforgivable. I agreed, my voice flat. And yet, here you are, Alpha of Silverwood, your life continuing, your pack thriving, while I was erased. Forgotten. The injustice of it all, the years of pain and loneliness, welled up, threatening to choke me. Why, Kael? After all this time, that's the one thing I need to understand. Why did you do it? Why destroy everything we were? He ran a hand through his dark hair, his gaze haunted, looking anywhere but directly at me for a long moment. The silence stretched, taut and heavy, filled only with the rustling of leaves and the frantic beating of my own heart. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, strained. You don't understand, Elara. You couldn't possibly. There were reasons. Dangers you knew nothing about. Dangers? I scoffed, a harsh, bitter sound. What possible danger could have warranted such cruelty? What threat could have been worse than the living death you condemned me to? My hand instinctively went to the hilt of the dagger Elara had gifted me, its familiar weight a cold comfort. Were you threatened, Kael? Did someone force your hand? Or was it simply that your feelings, as you so eloquently put it, just changed? His eyes, when they finally met mine again, were filled with a desperate torment that almost made me pause. It wasn't like that. It was to protect you, Elara. I swear it on my alpha blood, on my very soul. Protect me. I laughed then, a hollow, joyless sound that echoed strangely in the once sacred clearing. You call that protection? Tearing my heart out, casting me aside like refuse, leaving me to face the wilderness alone and broken? That was your idea of keeping me safe. The old pain, the raw betrayal, surged through me, nearly overwhelming my carefully constructed composure. My wolf snarled within, wanting to launch herself at him, to rend and tear. Yes. No. I mean, he stumbled over his words, his distress palpable. The words, they were cruel, I know, but they had to be, to make it believable. If he knew. Who is he, Kael? I pressed, taking a step closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Who held such power over the great Alpha Kael that he would betray his fated mate, the Luna of his pack? He looked away again, his jaw tight. I cannot speak of it. Even now, it could put you in danger. I have faced dangers you can only imagine in your comfortable Alpha Lodge, Kael, for years now. Thanks to you. I spat, my patience wearing thin. Stop hiding behind these vague pronouncements. If there is a truth here, a real reason beyond your own fickleness or cowardice, then speak it. Or are you going to tell me your feelings just miraculously changed back now that I've returned to make your life a misery? He flinched again at my words, his gaze snapping back to mine, filled with a sudden, sharp pain. "My feelings for you never changed, Elara," he said, his voice barely audible, yet carrying an intensity that vibrated through the air between us. "Every day without you has been a torment. Every breath a reminder of what I lost, what I threw away to keep you safe." His words, the raw emotion behind them, struck an unexpected chord. My wolf, despite my anger, whined softly. It was the mention of Maeve and his desperate explanation during our last near encounter, however, that truly snagged my attention, aligning with the horrifying entries in her journal. "Maeve," I said, the name tasting like poison on my tongue. "You mentioned her before. You said she warned you. Warned you about what, Kael? And for my sake? How did shattering my life equate to my safety in her wise counsel?" Kael's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He seemed to wrestle with himself for a moment. Then a sigh of resignation, or perhaps weary surrender, escaped him. "Maeve, yes. She was the one who brought me the evidence. The prophecies. The warnings about Forelag. She showed me his sigil, his threats against you. She swore that if we bonded, if you became Luna, he would destroy you, make your suffering his banner. She said the only way to avert his gaze was if I made you nothing to me." My mind raced, connecting his words to the spidery script in Maeve's journal. The evidence of Forlag's direct threat must be enhanced. He will see reason. He will protect her, even if he must break her first. A horrifying suspicion began to solidify, a truth more monstrous than Kael's simple betrayal. "She told you this?" I pressed, my voice deadly calm. "She showed you this evidence? And you believed her?" The wise elder Maeve, who always had the pack's best interests at heart. Sarcasm dripped from my words. I saw a flicker of confusion, then dawning horror in his eyes as he processed my tone, my implication. She has been a trusted advisor for generations, Elara," he said, though a note of uncertainty now tinged his voice. "Why would she lie about something so monstrous?" "Why indeed, Kael?" I countered, taking another step closer. I could smell the faint, familiar scent of him now, the pine and musk, and beneath it, the scent of his distress. It was an unwelcome intimacy. Unless Forelag wasn't the only one who didn't want me as Luna. Unless Maeve had her own reasons for wanting me gone, for wanting you, broken, perhaps even more malleable to her influence. I watched his face, saw the struggle as he tried to reconcile the Maeve he thought he knew with the possibility I was presenting. "No," he whispered, but it was a denial born of habit, not conviction. She grieved with me. She guided me. Or guided you exactly where she wanted you." I finished softly. "Tell me, Kael, did she suggest the precise words of your rejection? Did she advise you on how to make my pain believable enough for this phantom Forelag?" He stared at me, his amber eyes wide with a terrible, dawning comprehension. The pieces were clicking into place for him, just as they had for me when I read that journal. The shared enemy, the true architect of our ruin, was slowly, agonizingly, coming into focus. He looked utterly devastated, the weight of years of manipulation settling upon him like a physical blow. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence, his horrified expression, was confirmation enough. A heavy quiet descended, broken only by the chirping of a distant bird. We stood there, Elara and Kael, predator and prey, victim and another victim. The thought was disorienting. The pure, clean lines of my vengeance were now irrevocably tangled. My primary target might not have been the monster I'd envisioned, but a puppet, his strings pulled by a far more cunning hand. "If Maeve has done this," I said finally, my voice low, the ice in it now tinged with a new, more complex fire. "If she orchestrated this entire tragedy for her own ends, then she is the one who must truly pay." I looked at him then, truly looked at him, seeing not just the alpha who had rejected me, but a fellow pawn in Maeve's cruel game. "And you, Kael, will help me prove it. You owe me that much." He met my gaze, his own filled with a mixture of despair, shame, and a surprising flicker of grim determination. "Anything, Elara. Anything to uncover the truth, to right even a fraction of this wrong. Tell me what to do." For the first time in years, a path forward seemed to appear, not one of pure revenge against him, but perhaps one of shared, albeit bitter, purpose against her. Just as a fragile, unspoken understanding began to form in the charged air between us, a soft, silken voice shattered the moment. Working so closely together, my dears. Elder Maeve stepped out from behind a thicket of ancient rhododendrons, her eyes, those supposedly kind, wise eyes, glinting with something sharp and unreadable, a knowing, dangerous smile playing on her lips. How truly unexpected. I was just taking a stroll, enjoying the tranquility of this old place. It holds so many memories, doesn't it, Elara? Her gaze flicked to me, and for the first time, I saw not an elder, but a viper, coiled and ready to strike. The silken sound of Maeve's voice, cool and laced with an unreadable amusement, was a viper's hiss in the suddenly charged silence of the clearing. Every protective instinct in me, instincts I had so horrifically betrayed years ago, screamed to life. Elara was here, standing beside me, the ghost of our past given flesh, the truth about Maeve's treachery almost within our grasp, and now she stood before us, the architect of all our ruin, her eyes glinting with a knowing, predatory malice. What in the goddess's name did she suspect? And how much danger had our fragile, newborn understanding just been plunged into? Elder Maeve, I managed, my voice a low growl I barely recognized, stepping slightly, almost imperceptibly, in front of Elara. A futile gesture, perhaps, given Elara's own formidable presence now, but the need to shield her was a force as elemental as my own heartbeat. We were just discussing old memories. As you said, this place holds so many. Maeve's smile didn't reach her eyes. Old memories, Alpha Kael? Or perhaps, forging new, rather intense ones. Her gaze flickered to Elara, sharp and appraising. It is good to see you looking so vibrant, Elara dear. The wilderness has evidently agreed with you. Elara didn't flinch. Her voice, when she spoke, was like chipped ice. The wilderness teaches survival, Maeve, and it exposes truths long buried. She held up the small, leather-bound journal she'd found. My heart hammered against my ribs. Truths like the ones you so carefully documented about your concerns for my suitability and your enhancements of threats to ensure I was removed. Maeve's composure, for the first time since I'd known her, faltered. Just for a breath, a shadow of something ugly, fear, rage, crossed her features before being smoothed away by that practiced mask of serene wisdom. My dear child, you misunderstand my private musings. An elder's duty is to consider all possibilities, to protect the pack. Protect the pack. I finally found my voice, the rage I'd suppressed for years at my own foolishness, at her betrayal of my trust, finally igniting. Or protect your own ambitions, Maeve? Your web of lies cost me my mate, my honor. It plunged Elara into years of suffering. I took a step towards her, my wolf a furious beast straining against its leash. We found your correspondence, Maeve. The fabricated evidence. The notes detailing your manipulation of me, of Forlag's supposed threat. This wasn't entirely true. We hadn't found direct correspondence with Forlag yet, but Elara's journal findings of Maeve's intent were damning enough, and in that moment, bluffing felt like our only weapon. Maeve drew herself up, her eyes narrowing. You dare accuse me? You're Alpha, siding with this rogue who returns only to sow chaos. She tried to appeal to my authority, to the old dynamics, but the spell was broken. I saw her then, not as the wise mentor, but as the poison that had infected my life. Your reign of deceit ends now, Maeve, Elara stated, her voice ringing with an authority that sent a shiver of something akin to pride through me. Despite the gravity of our situation, we have your journal. We know what you did. She looked at me then, a quick, sharp glance. Let's take this before the council, Kael. And the pack. Let them hear the truth from the Viper's own records. The public reckoning was the hardest thing I'd ever faced, harder even than that first, false rejection of Elara. Standing before my pack, before the hastily summoned council of alphas from allied territories, with Elara beside me, not as my accuser this time, but as the bringer of a devastating truth, was an agony beyond words. She laid out Maeve's treachery with cold, irrefutable precision, using the Elder's own journal entries, her documented manipulations, as a damning indictment. Maeve, cornered, tried to twist her words, to feign misunderstood concern, but the carefully constructed web of her deceit unraveled under Elara's relentless exposure. Then, it was my turn. My voice, when I began to speak, was hoarse, thick with unshed tears and years of corrosive guilt. Everything Elara has said is true. I was a fool, a blind, arrogant fool, manipulated by a woman I trusted as a mother. I looked at my pack, at the shocked, disbelieving faces. I am the alpha who, in a misguided attempt to protect my mate from a threat I now know was largely fabricated, inflicted upon her the greatest cruelty imaginable. I broke our sacred bond with lies. I drove her into exile. There is no excuse for my weakness, for my failure to see the truth that was before me. I turned to Elara then, her face pale but resolute. And before them all, I knelt. My alpha pride, my very being, prostrated before the woman I had wronged so profoundly. Elara, I offer no defense, only my deepest, most abject apology, and my life, if you would still have any part of it, to atone. My actions were mine alone, however. Manipulated I was. I failed you. I failed our pack. My wolf echoed my submission, a silent, heartfelt plea for a forgiveness I knew I hadn't yet earned. It was in that moment of raw, public confession, as a stunned silence held the assembly captive, that the alarms blared. Shouts erupted from the perimeter. Rogues. Attack. It's Forlag's banner. Chaos. Maeve, seeing her last chance, perhaps, tried to slip away in the confusion, but loyal guards, their faces grim, held her fast. Forlag. He had come, whether summoned by Maeve as a desperate last resort, or simply seizing the opportunity of our internal strife, it didn't matter. His warriors, brutal and swift, were breaching our defenses. My first instinct was to roar, to shift, to meet the threat head-on, to protect Elara above all. But as I surged to my feet, Elara was already moving, her eyes blazing not with fear, but with a chilling, focused intensity. The veiled hand transformed into a battle queen before my very eyes. Hold the line at the river. Her voice, clear and commanding, cut through the din. She wasn't asking. She was an alpha asserting herself. Beta Rorik, take the western flank, draw their fire. Kael, she met my gaze, and in that instant, I saw not the ghost of the girl I'd lost, but the formidable leader she had become, with me. We punched through their center, find Forlag himself. A wild, fierce pride surged through me, momentarily eclipsing the shame, the fear. As you command, my queen, I said, the words heartfelt, my wolf roaring its approval. And side by side, not as alpha and a broken mate, but as two sovereign powers united by a desperate cause, we plunged into the heart of the battle. Elara fought with a savage grace I'd never witnessed, her movements lethal, her strategies brilliant. I matched her, blow for blow, our instincts, our very souls, moving in a deadly, harmonious dance that had been denied for too long. We were a whirlwind of claws and fury, tearing through Forlag's ranks, driven by years of pain and a desperate, shared need to protect what was ours. Forlag himself was a beast, a mountain of scarred muscle and pure malice, but against our combined, desperate onslaught, against the rallying cry of a pack now fiercely loyal to the sight of their true alpha pair fighting as one, he faltered. We cornered him, Elara and I, her eyes like chips of ice, mine burning with righteous fury. His defeat was brutal, decisive. He was captured, his forces scattered and broken. In the bloodied, weary aftermath, with Forlag secured and Maeve brought before the victorious council and a silent, watching pack, Elara delivered the Elder's sentence. Her voice, though tired, held the unyielding strength of tempered steel. You preyed on love, Maeve, on loyalty, on trust. You twisted bonds and broke hearts for your own ambition. May you find only the emptiness in the barren lands that you sought to create in others. Maeve was led away, her reign of whispers finally over. Victory. Justice. But as the adrenaline faded, leaving behind only exhaustion and the grime of battle, Elara turned to me. The pack looked to us, their faces a mixture of awe, relief, and uncertainty. The immediate threats were gone, but the question of what we were now, hung heavy and unspoken in the air, a tangible thing between us. Her eyes, when they met mine, held no triumph, only a deep, searching weariness, and a flicker of something I dared not name. "What now, Kael?" she asked, her voice quiet, yet it resonated louder than any battle cry. What now, indeed?
The silence after my question, "What now, Elara?" stretched taut as a bowstring, each beat of my weary heart a drum counting down to a judgment I both craved and feared. The battlefield around us was quieting, the groans of the wounded and the low murmur of our pack warriors the only sounds under the bruised twilight sky. Foreleg was defeated, Maeve's treachery exposed and her sentence delivered. But Elara, her eyes, clear and steady despite the exhaustion that etched fine lines around them, held no easy answers, only the immense weight of our shattered past and, perhaps, the faintest, most terrifying glimmer of a possible S. If I had learned anything, looking back at the desolation of the years without her, it was that hope itself could be a cruel master. She finally turned to me, the grime of battle unable to dim the fierce light that now shone from within her. It wasn't the soft glow of the Elara I'd known, but the incandescent blaze of the queen she had become. "Justice has been served on Maeve, Kael," she said, her voice low, carrying easily over the settling dust. "Foreleg's threat is ended. But the wounds she inflicted, they are not so easily mended. The pack is shaken. Our bond." She paused, and that small hesitation sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. "It is a ruin." My heart sank. A ruin. She was right. "I know, Elara," I managed, my throat tight. "My words of apology, my actions in the battle, they are but a breath against a hurricane of pain I caused. What would you have me do? My life, my will, it is yours to command. If there is any path to atonement, any way to rebuild even a fraction of what I destroyed, I will walk it, no matter the cost." A long moment passed. Then, after what felt like an eternity of silent contemplation, where I could almost hear the gears of her sharp mind turning, she addressed not just me, but the newly forming circle of trusted elders who had gathered. "There is an old wound in Silverwood," Elara announced, her voice gaining strength, ringing with a newfound authority that suited her so well. "A spiritual wound that Maeve exploited, perhaps even deepened. The Sunstone, our pack's heart relic, symbol of truth, clarity, and the Luna's enduring blessing. Maeve stole it years ago, hid it away. Its absence has allowed shadows to fester. To truly heal Silverwood, to cleanse the lingering taint of Maeve's deceit, the Sunstone must be restored." Her gaze then found mine, sharp and unwavering. "And as a measure of your atonement, Kael, as a testament to your willingness to restore what was broken, you will retrieve it. A quest. A tangible act. A chance." My wolf surged within me, not with alpha dominance, but with a desperate, grateful hope. "I will not fail you, Elara," I vowed, my voice thick with emotion. "Or our pack. Again. Tell me where I must go, what I must face. I will do it." A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, the first I had seen directed at me in what felt like a lifetime that wasn't tinged with bitterness or pain. It was like the first ray of dawn after an endless night. "The Sunstone lies hidden in the Whisperwind Peaks, guarded by old magic and treacherous paths," she said. Then, to my utter astonishment, and I saw the murmurs ripple through the listening elders, she added, "And I will accompany you. My head snapped up. Elara? You would? This concerns the Luna's heritage, Kael, she stated, her expression resolute, though I thought I saw a flicker of something vulnerable in her eyes. And more importantly, she added, her gaze locking with mine, I need to witness your commitment firsthand. I need to see if the Kael who fought beside me today is the Kael who will walk this path of true repentance. What would I have done if she'd refused? I didn't know, but the thought of facing this without her, even as my judge, was a bleak one. The journey to the Whisperwind Peaks was a trial in every sense. The lands beyond Silverwood's borders were wild, unforgiving. We faced treacherous blizzards in the high passes, navigated forests haunted by shadow creatures Lyra's training had likely prepared Elara for but which tested my own limits, and all the while, we walked in a fragile, charged silence. Elara was different. Still wary, her guard firmly in place, but not entirely the Ice Queen of her initial return. She spoke when necessary, her observations sharp, her survival skills undeniable. There were moments, huddled around a meager campfire against the biting wind, when the old Elara would surface, a dry, unexpected witticism, a shared glance of understanding when we faced a particular obstacle. It's one thing to say you regret, Kael, she said one night, her voice soft but clear above the crackling flames, her eyes fixed on the dancing firelight. It's another to live that truth when no one but the moon is watching your every step, every choice. Her words were a constant reminder of the precipice I walked. One misstep, one reversion to old patterns of alpha arrogance, and I knew whatever fragile bridge we were building would shatter. During one particularly harrowing climb, a rock slide separated us. I saw Elara lose her footing, her cry swallowed by the roar of falling stones. Without a thought, driven by pure, primal instinct, I found a way across the shifting scree, reached her, and pulled her to safety just as the ledge she'd clung to crumbled into the abyss. We lay there, panting, her body pressed against mine, the shared adrenaline a wild current between us. Her scent, that intoxicating mix of pine, berries, and her unique essence, filled my senses, a painful, beautiful reminder. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breathless, her eyes wide and searching when she looked up at me. It was a small crack in her armor, but it felt like a monumental victory. The Sunstone was hidden deep within the Cave of Echoes, a place steeped in ancient magic, its chambers designed to prey on an intruder's deepest fears and regrets. Illusions of Maeve, of a dying forelag, even of my own father, taunted me. But the worst was the echo of Elara's voice, from that terrible night of the rejection, her sobs, her pleas. It nearly broke me. But Elara was there, her presence a steady anchor. She faced her own phantoms, I knew, but she moved through them with a strength that awed me. To reach the Sunstone, one of us had to pass through a shimmering barrier of pure, volatile energy. I didn't hesitate. Let me, I said. This is my burden. The pain as I forced my way through was excruciating, like fire searing my very soul, but the thought of Elara, of atoning, fueled me. I emerged on the other side, collapsing, the Sunstone, a breathtaking crystal pulsing with warm, golden light, just within reach. But as I touched it, a backlash of dark magic, a final trap, erupted. Agony ripped through me. Kael! Elara's scream was real this time. She was somehow beside me, her hands glowing with a soft, silver light I'd never seen, a forgotten Luna healing gift, she later explained, something Lyra had helped her awaken. Her touch soothed the fire, drew out the darkness, her tears falling onto my face as she worked. You foolish, noble Alpha, she choked out, a sob in her voice. You would have died for me, again. 1,000 times, Elara, I rasped, my hand finding hers, clutching it tight as strength slowly returned. If it meant undoing even a fraction of the pain I caused. With the sunstone now held between us, its light bathing the cave in a warm, pure glow, the last of my defenses, the last of hers, seemed to melt away. Years of pain, misunderstanding, and suppressed longing crashed over us. I pulled her to me, and her lips met mine in a kiss that was both a desperate plea and a tentative acceptance, a raw, emotional inferno that consumed all the shadows between us. It was a promise of healing, a whisper of a future I hadn't dared to dream of. When we finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, the sunstone pulsed warmly in our joined hands. "What does this mean for us, Kael?" Elara whispered, her voice raw, her eyes, so long guarded, now shining with a vulnerable, questioning light. The path to true healing, to rebuilding what was so utterly broken, had finally, truly, begun. The light of the sunstone throbbed warmly against our joined hands, a steady, reassuring heartbeat in the echoing silence of the cave, but it was Kael's answer to my whispered question, "What does this mean for us, Kael?" That held the true power to illuminate the rest of my life, or plunge me back into the familiar shadows of doubt. His amber eyes, so recently filled with the agony of battle and the rawness of his confession, now held a depth of adoration, humility, and a fierce, unwavering resolve that made my own breath catch. The kiss we'd shared, a searing reclamation of all that had been stolen and a promise of all that could be, still pulsed on my lips. Looking back, how could I have ever doubted the true north of his heart, even when it was so expertly hidden by another's treachery and his own misguided sacrifice? "It means everything, Elara," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion, his thumb stroking the back of my hand where it lay clasped with his over the glowing sunstone. "It means a new beginning, if you'll have me. Not as the alpha who failed you, but as the wolf who will spend an eternity proving he is worthy of the incredible, formidable queen you have become. It means whatever future you will allow us to build, together." Tears, not of sorrow this time, but of a profound, cleansing relief, welled in my eyes. "Together," I echoed, the word a vow in itself. "Yes, Kael. Together." The journey back to Silverwood, with the sunstone lighting our way, was different from the one that had led us to the Whisperwind Peaks. The silences were no longer fraught with tension but filled with a comfortable understanding. We spoke of the future, not with grand pronouncements, but with quiet hopes, sketching out the shape of a life rebuilt on truth and an unshakable, tested love. We designed our own ceremony, not one bound by stiff tradition, but one that would honor our unique, scarred path. Under the radiant gaze of the full moon, with the restored sunstone pulsating its warm, golden light at the heart of our pack's most sacred ritual ground, we stood before our people. Not in opulent alpha and Lunar regalia, but in simple, elegant attire that spoke of our unity, our equal standing. Our werewolf familiars, mine a sleek shadow wolf Elara had said was drawn to my resilient spirit, and Kael's a powerful silver brute that mirrored his own strength, sat calmly at our sides, witnesses to this sacred moment. Looking back, I began, my voice clear and strong, resonating with the love that now filled me. The shadows almost consumed us, the pain almost broke us. But here, in the light of this truth we fought so hard to uncover, I choose this new dawn, Kael, with you, as my mate, my partner, my king. Kael's answering vows were a balm to the old wounds. "My queen, my Elara, my very soul," he said, his eyes never leaving mine, his voice raw with devotion. "I broke us once with secrets born of manipulated fear. Now, I vow my life to open honesty, to cherish the fierce, compassionate heart of the woman you are, and to walk beside you, always as your equal, in light and shadow, for all our days." We each touched the sunstone, and I felt its ancient magic, its blessing, flow through me, intertwining with Kael's, then radiating outwards, a warm wave of hope and renewed strength that washed over our silently watching pack. Their joyous, heartfelt howls of approval were a symphony, a true welcoming home. Several moons later, life in Silverwood had found a new, vibrant rhythm. The Festival of the Reclaimed Sun, an event Elara herself had initiated to celebrate the Sunstone's return and the pack's healing, filled the main clearing with laughter, music, and the scent of roasting meats. Children, their faces painted with sunbursts, chased each other between the dancing adults, their joyous shrieks a testament to the peace we had fought for. Kael and I presided, not from raised thrones, but walking amongst our people, sharing stories, offering encouragement, our leadership a shared endeavor. "They look happy, don't they?" Kael murmured, his arm warm around my waist as we watched a group of young wolves attempt a rather clumsy traditional dance. "They feel secure, Kael," I replied, leaning into his strength, a gesture that now felt as natural as breathing. "They see their alphas united, not just in power, but in heart. It makes all the difference." An elder, one of the new council members whose wisdom we both valued, approached us, his weathered face crinkled in a smile. "Alpha Kael, Alpha Queen Elara," he said, his bow deep. "Your joint wisdom in settling the trade dispute with the Riverbend Pack has brought us much prosperity. How could we have doubted the strength that would come from you both leading as one?" We exchanged a knowing, private smile, a silent acknowledgement of the journey that had brought us to this moment of shared respect and effective partnership. Later that evening, in the quiet warmth of our chambers, the weariness of the festival settled upon us, a comfortable, shared exhaustion. The scent of us, of Kael, of home, was a soothing balm. He sat behind me by the crackling hearth, gently brushing my hair, his touch sending familiar shivers of pleasure down my spine. There were times, I confessed softly, leaning back against his strong chest, during my exile, when I never thought I'd feel peace again. Let alone this. I gestured to the tranquil room, to the contented sigh of my wolf curled at my feet, to the unspoken love that filled the space between us. Kael's arms tightened around me, his lips brushing my temple. "Every scar you bear, Elara, tells the story of your incredible strength, your survival." And now, his voice was a low rumble against my back, "We write a new story, my love. A story filled with light." He paused, and I could feel the smile in his voice. "And perhaps, if the moon goddess blesses us further, the laughter of pups to fill these halls one day?" I turned in his embrace, my heart swelling with a joy so profound it almost hurt. "Perhaps, my king," I whispered, my own smile radiant, mirroring his. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, the future feels limitless, boundless with possibilities. His kiss was tender, then deepened, a passionate affirmation of all we had overcome, and all the beautiful tomorrows that stretched before us. And so, our days unfolded, a tapestry woven with threads of enduring love, shared leadership, and the quiet joy of a hard-won peace. We stood often on the high precipice overlooking our thriving lands, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes with our familiars at our sides, watching the sun rise, a daily reminder of our new beginning. The sunstone, which I often wore in a simple pendant close to my heart, would pulse with a gentle warmth against my skin, a steady reassurance. We were forged in shadow, scarred by betrayal, Kael might say, his arm around me, his voice filled with a quiet wonder. "But from those ashes, we rose," I would reply, my head resting on his shoulder. "Not just as survivors, Kael, but as sovereigns of our own destiny, our love the truest, most resilient magic of all." Our bond, once tested to its breaking point, then painstakingly, lovingly remade, was now stronger, truer, than either of us could have ever imagined. It was a testament to a love that had faced the abyss and chosen the light, a love destined for a happily ever after that was all the more precious for the trials that had paved its way. And as we looked towards the horizon, filled with the promise of countless sunrises to share, I knew, with every fiber of my being, that our story was truly, finally, one of everlasting light.